Hello, gorgeous. How is it going? Welcome to the last weekend of Pride Month, and therefore the last episode of my Pride Month series. But fear not, I will not stop covering gay people now that Pride Month is over. I obviously love gay people literally more than anything, as I am one myself. If you're new here, my name is Jessie James. I am an astrologer, and my podcast is all about celebrity astrology and pop culture astrology. And today we are covering the one, the only Julia Fox. I love Julia Fox. This is so surprising to so many people. Oh my gosh. I read her book earlier this year, Down the Drain. She has been through so much. She's hot, she's iconic, and she's a lesbian. Literally, what more is there to love? Actually, a lot, and we're going to get into it today. But before we get started, as always, some announcements and life updates. The main one, obviously, is that I launched my astrology business this past week. I launched it on the new moon in Cancer on Wednesday. I'm a Pisces rising. Cancer is my fifth house. New beginning in areas of entrepreneurship and creativity. Perfect timing. Jupiter is there. Jupiter was conjunct the sun and the moon. Just a beautiful confluence of things. And this is why astrology is literally for everything. Like, even if you're not a super introspective person and you don't care too much about what your chart says about you and your strengths and weaknesses or whatever, astrology is a map and you can use it as a tool to further your own personal aims, whatever they are. Like, if you are launching a business and you need to find the correct date and time to launch your business, that's something that I can help you with using astrology. If you're looking to send a message or ask your boss for a raise or have a difficult conversation in your relationship, using astrology, you can figure out the best day and time to do those things. And that's part of my business and why I'm here. I want to empower people to see astrology not just as some like woo-woo, basically like MBTI, like personality types thing that a lot of people assume it is, but a real functional tool that you can use every single day in your life. And I fear this means that I have to make my life really good so that I can lead by example and live a life that people are like, oh, I do actually want to emulate her life. Maybe this astrology is onto something, which simply is just a fact that gets me up in the morning because I'm like, well, if I don't have anything to show for myself, then no one's going to want to come to me. So I've got to have a lot to show for myself. And I really do feel like I'm accomplishing that. Thank you so much to everyone who's booked readings this week and who supported me this week. I literally am so appreciative. Like, this is the work of my life. I've been in the corporate world for 10 years. I've been so restrained because when I was 23, I went like viral on social media for having a dating blog, and people got so mad that I was talking about dating men in such like a casual and like using them way because I am not straight. So I've never had an actual romantic interest in men. I just use them as catalysts for my own life journey. But people got so mad about this that they literally called my company. I worked for Accenture. Like, they called Accenture. It's a 400,000 person company, and were trying to get me fired. And so I've just lived in fear of that same thing happening over and over. I've always been so careful about, like, I smoke a lot of weed, but like not posting weed on my Instagram story. Or I used to have an OnlyFans, and just like every single day, I was so worried that someone was going to take my OnlyFans and send it to my manager or my job, and then I would get fired, even though there's literally no rule against not having an OnlyFans. Like, the corporate world is such bullshit. They like control your whole entire life. But it's like, you actually only get me 8 hours a day. Like, only the time I am on the clock is your time to care about. The rest of what I do with my life is not your problem. And yet they think it is. Which is to say that ever since I left the corporate world 2 months ago, I literally just feel free. I feel like I still have a lot of mask layers on from, being an autistic woman my whole life and like being a people pleaser. But I feel like I have shed one layer of mask. I have just removed it from myself, and it's a work in progress. But I will drop this on the floor over here. And yeah, I am posting about drugs on my Instagram story. I am cursing with reckless abandon. Thank you very much. Oh, and I am posting thirst traps. No one can stop me. This world is so beautiful. I'm so happy to be here. Second topic I want to cover before we get started is that I recently learned that my ex has a new girlfriend. And that's really interesting because he's gay. And I'm gay. And so that was sort of like a perfect, like, let's part ways and both come out as being gay people, and then maybe you don't have to be so mean to a woman because you hate yourself and her by extension for the rest of your life. No. I get a text from my friend a couple weeks ago that was like, hey, I just ran into so-and-so leaving his new girlfriend's house. She happens to live across the street from me. And I was like, a new girlfriend? He's gay. Like, what is going on? But naturally, it is so not in a narcissist man's nature to go more than like 7-8 months without having a woman to control. So obviously he had to dive back in. This is a big problem with these like DL men who refuse to acknowledge that they are actually gay and have a lot of internalized homophobia and like repress their sexuality. Like, they have a miserable life, and so they need to find someone else to project their miserable life onto who becomes their victim. And so I'm like, well, this isn't really my problem. You know, like, I was in a relationship with him for 3 years. I got out almost a full year ago. Very exciting. And it's not really my business anymore. However, like, I would love to protect an innocent woman from becoming his next victim of narcissistic abuse. I paid $10,000 for therapy over the past year. Like, it's not good times. And narcissists always go for people who are people pleasers and also probably have narcissistic abuse wounds from their own childhood. But is this part of her life journey? Like, is this the catalyst that she is going to need to go seek therapy to heal from a lifetime of abuse from her dad, which is my story? Who knows? But it's just like, what do we even do with these guys? You know, like, I break up with a narcissist and I just release him back into the world to go be a horrible person to another woman. Like, therapy doesn't help narcissists because they don't think that they have done anything wrong and they think that they're perfect. And you have to think that there's something wrong with you and want to change it in order for therapy to work. So what do we do with them? We just like let them run around and exist? I don't know. I'm not trying to say anything that's going to get me canceled or anything that will make me look like a horrible person. I'm just saying, it's a question. What do we do about it? But anyway, my ex has no social media, which when we were dating, I was like, oh, guys, this is so refreshing. Like, isn't it so nice to be dating a man with no social media? And I'm not even someone who like cares about guys looking at women's thirst traps on Instagram, because I also was looking at women's thirst traps on Instagram and somehow didn't know that I was a lesbian, but that's neither here nor there. But it's more like the type of guy who's really into Instagram and social media, the type of guy who like develops thirst for women's DMs. I'm talking about Ace and Nick from Love Island, that sort of vibe. And so having a guy who was not on Instagram, I was like, he is humble. He does not care about other women, blah, blah, blah. And now I see it as deeply, deeply sinister, because you don't have any social media for women to go backstalk you and maybe reach out to an ex and find out that you treated her horribly. Like, it's pretty absurd. You can't trust a guy with social media. You can't trust a guy without social media. It seems that the common denominator is that you can't trust a guy. And this is my plug. Last couple of days of Pride Month. 1, my readings are 20% off through the end of June at calendly.com/popstrology if you would like to book one. 2, maybe become gay. Just try it out. If you have never tried, if you've never dipped your toes into the pool of women out there, you might be surprised at what you find out. Like, you might be surprised how much of your inherent attraction to men is societal conditioning, is watching Disney movies since you were a child, is putting men on a pedestal and valuing their validation more than you value validation from women because you're told that men are like so great or whatever. Just try it. Just think about it. That's my Pride Month plug, and let's get into Julia Fox. Julia Fox was born on February 2nd, 1990 at 2:00 p.m. in Milan, Italy. She is an Aquarius Sun, a Taurus Moon, and a Cancer rising. Her mother, Gracie, was Italian, and her father, Thomas Fox, was an American man. And yes, Julia Fox is her birth name, not just a stage name. Apparently, when she was born, like, nurses would walk by and be like, with those big blue eyes and a name like Julia Fox, she is going to be a star. And she became one. Julia did not have an easy time growing up. She basically was abandoned by both of her parents. She lived with her grandpa in a small town in Italy named Saronno. until she was 6 while her mom was finishing college and her dad lived on a boat that was docked in New York City. Men on boat epidemic also needs to be dealt with. At age 6, she moved to Manhattan to live with her dad, not on a boat. And then at age 14, she moved back to Italy. She lived with a host family in her mom's hometown and attended a private Catholic school. But she was asked by her host family to leave the house because she was smoking and skipping school. So she secretly moved into her mom's empty apartment and lived there and continued going to school. And then she ran away to New York, and it took a while, but her family finally reported her missing to the authorities and put the wrong birth date on the wanted posters, which was just like a slap in the face to Julia. It's like, you abandoned me. You're now reporting me for running away, even though I've literally been without you my whole life. And you don't even know my birthday. Like, very, very fucked up shit. I mean, Julia spent so much of her life in like stints of homelessness. Her dad was emotionally abusive and very volatile and fought with her a lot. Her mom was really absent, but when she was able to get a hold of her mom would like explode at her and they would fight a lot. Like, she didn't really have a support system growing up. Julia Fox has a Capricorn stellium, and that comes across really clearly here. She's just someone who had to grow up emotionally so fast. She's someone who had to be a parent to her own parents. Her dad has stolen money from her. She has not had an easy time of it. And so it's not a huge surprise that she fell into like drug use. She started dating her boyfriend who was a drug dealer, and then she moved in with him, and she had to go with him on these like drug deals that would evolve into fights and would evolve into like the police chasing them. And finally her boyfriend was sent to jail, and then she had to move out of his apartment and move in with her friend. She attempted suicide when she was 16 and then was institutionalized in a psychiatric ward where she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and she like really wanted to get out, but her dad was like, no, you have to stay. Just like a very, very messed up sort of situation. She developed a heroin addiction that was on and off throughout her late teens and her early 20s. When she was 17, she had a heroin overdose that was like a near-death experience. And she also worked a bunch of jobs to stay afloat, including a job as a dominatrix in a sex dungeon, which is where she met her sugar daddy. And she dated her sugar daddy for a while, but she was also cheating on him with another guy. And then he would like find out, but it was one of those like, I love you because you're cheating on me, like a very toxic relationship with two people who enjoyed a toxic relationship. And then eventually her sugar daddy found a different sugar baby, and she went to him and she was like, what the fuck? Like, you pay my rent. You can't just hang me out to dry. And so he did give her a bunch of money. Like, she is so powerful and so inspirational. Like, I too am a lesbian who would like to take money from rich men. Thank you very much. She met her best friend Gianna in a, I think, Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous sort of meeting, and then was with Gianna for a long time, like as best friends. She got cast in the movie Uncut Gems that came out in 2019, and Gianna was always coming to set with her. She described her as like super bubbly and like always up for something fun. And then in 2019, Gianna very sadly passed away of a fentanyl overdose, which was the inciting factor to help Julia completely stay clean, and she's been clean ever since. So a very, very sad situation and life-changing situation that ended up having a positive lining for Julia's life, which is very much Capricorn and also very much Jupiter conjunct her ascendant, but we'll get into that more in a little bit. Julia confirmed in an article in 2022 that she was dating Kanye West, and in her book she refers to him only as the artist, but she talks about how he dressed her in clothes like a doll, and clearly this is something that Kanye just does. And I actually think I heard recently that he came out as gay, but I didn't do any fact checking on that, so don't trust me, but like he definitely is, right? Like, if a man is obsessed with dressing a woman like a doll, the man is gay and he wants to be wearing those clothes himself, but he can't because of his like toxic masculinity, repressed homophobia, whatever. And so he needs to dress a woman, but it's him that he wants to be dressing, period. He did the same thing to Kim Kardashian, and he's doing the same thing to Bianca Censori. I don't even know what's going on there. I try not to pay attention to his life. He is deeply evil and troubled, but yeah. Julia Fox, and then they broke up very shortly after. And then after they broke up, a photoshopped headline came out that said that Kanye had broken up with Julia because he didn't like when she went goblin mode. which was not true, but went viral and was very funny. And this is one thing that I love about Julia Fox, is that she is just fodder for a viral moment. She is fodder for men who hate women. She is just fodder for a good moment. And I'll put in some clips here.
Like, would you consider yourself Ye's muse?
Yeah, a little, maybe.
What does that even mean to no one that's ever been? Because I remember you were like, this is not the first time that I like. What is a muse?
I mean, I was Josh Safdie's muse when he wrote Uncut Gems.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like things like that.
You always have that strong eye makeup. Is that you, or do you have a makeup artist who does that for you?
I actually did it myself. Yeah.
Nice.
But she's just so funny and so quotable. At some point in 2021 or 2022, she became celibate, and then she announced her celibacy on May 11th, 2024. And she also talked about how after Roe vs. Wade was overturned in June 2022, her celibacy became a way to do like a subtle sort of rebellion. But she said that originally it was because she was just done with men after having given it her best shot. And then in 2024, she publicly came out as a lesbian. So that's a brief overview of Julia's life story. Let's move on to the astrology. As I mentioned, Julia Fox is an Aquarius Sun. Aquarius is her 8th house, being a Cancer rising. And people who have Aquarius as the 8th house, so all Cancer risings, have a deep fear of being too weird or like being so different from other people that they're completely left out. They never feel like they fit in. And so they control this fear by becoming super independent people. They're like, I don't need you. I can do everything myself. And especially with Julia's Sun being here, this is her whole like life compass is around this. I fear being left out because I'm strange, and so I will prove that I don't need other people to help me, which, considering her childhood, makes a lot of sense. The 8th house is also about your sexuality. And so having Aquarius here means that you have the Aquarian themes of like change and doing things differently and liking new things and rebellion mixed with sexuality. So these are people who have that like strong mischievous streak when it comes to like sex and sexuality. But the way that they're intrigued by new things in sex is also the way they're intrigued by new things in the world. And specifically with this being the 8th house, the natural house of Scorpio, they're intrigued by things that lie beneath. Like these are people who just strongly want to make connections that other people can't see. They want to connect intangible things or things that other people might be like, those two things are never related. And these people are like, they're actually very related, and I will show you why. But beyond that, just like having the sun in the 8th house and it being Aquarius, these are people whose whole life journey is a journey of change, and it's a journey of making new emotional connections. They have to balance the paradox that's within themselves within their life compass, within their sun, that they both seek independence and they want to develop really deep shared emotional connections with people. And so they have to find a balance of that, like how much time to spend with other people versus how much time to spend with themselves to achieve the change and the growth that they need to achieve in this lifetime. The sun is the core of our being, and the sun in Aquarius brings a fresh way to look at life's mysteries. And I think that just the overall theme of Julia's sun, and therefore her ego and her life compass and her life journey, is one of change and rebirth, of going under and figuring out new things and bringing them back up to the surface and integrating them, and then sharing them with other people, and then repeating that cycle again. They're really focused on breaking free from old beliefs and old limiting views of the world, and really going into themselves and interrogating the structures and the societal messages they've received and how those have impacted them and limited their view, so that they can break down those old structures and see things in a new and innovative and unconventional way that most other people can't make the connections about. Julia's sun in Aquarius makes a square to her moon in Taurus in the 11th house, which means that she was born on a first quarter moon. When the moon and sun are conjunct, that's a new moon. When the moon is opposite the sun, that's a full moon. And so when you have a square on either side, that's either the first quarter or the third quarter moon. And especially since the moon is Julia's chart ruler, this is a really important aspect in her chart, but it's also a difficult aspect. Like the luminaries, the sun and the moon, are the two most personal planets in your birth chart, and having them in a square, which is like a tense aspect of signs that don't really agree with each other. Taurus and Aquarius are both fixed signs, so they both don't really like to change from the way that they do things. But Taurus is an earth sign, a feminine earth sign, and Aquarius is a masculine air sign. And those two elements just don't really know how to speak to each other. So this means that throughout this person's life, throughout Julia Fox's life, she has to experience having a conflict between her innate wish to adapt to her environment and to others in her environment, represented by the moon, and her creative drive to go out into the world and create something and follow her heart's journey, which is her sun. Anytime you have a square between the sun and the moon, it represents a conflict between what the individual wants, which is the sun, and what the individual needs, which is the moon. And to move forward in life, this person needs to find a way to integrate those two things, to be able to hold that paradox, those two seeming opposites, and understand that they can and do exist at the same time, and that you can and will, if you want to be successful, feed both of them enough that they're satisfied and not always fighting with each other. And of course, when you're following your sun's journey, when you're following your ego and your life compass, the moon is always going to be in conflict with that. You have to learn that the past is always going to come and get you. It's always going to try to come and haunt you. And you can either let it pull you back and prevent you from moving forward and achieving the things that you want to achieve, or you can use it as a catalyst. You can be like, fuck those guys. I'm going to show them what I can really do and move forward and achieve great things with your life. And it very much does seem like Julia Fox has accomplished the latter, which I am very proud of her for. Personally, I have a third quarter moon and I am still working on doing this myself. But at this point, I think that I have realized that my dad is actually like my biggest op. He just really doesn't think that I can be successful in having my own business. And so I'm going to prove him wrong. Duh. One of the many reasons that Julia Fox is my role model. I'm sure a lot of people relate to this, but as children, people with this sun square moon aspect never really felt like their parents were proud of what they had achieved. They felt like what their parents wanted them to be and what they wanted to be themselves are two fundamentally different and conflicting things. So they had to either choose to become what their parents wanted them to become and sacrifice their own life goals, or to follow their own life goals and sacrifice the approval and pride of their parents. And finally, this is also an aspect that is common with a lot of like messy family breakups, which I don't think could possibly be more true than it is with Julia Fox. Cancer risings have Taurus as their 11th house of like friends and friend groups and dreams and wishes. So these people really value loyalty and harmony and balance in their friends and friend groups because Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Venus is all about love and harmony. And also Taurus, the bull, the fixed earth sign, is known for being very stubborn, but also very loyal. And so these people seek out loyal friends. Like having a very small group of close-knit friends is so much more important to these people than having, say, Gemini in the 11th house, which is where you would want to have literally as many friends as possible. That's not what Taurus is looking to do. Since the 11th house is also about dreams and goals, and Taurus is a very practical earth sign, these people's dreams and ambitions tend to be in very practical matters, very material things. They always try to keep their feet on the ground while also not losing their dreamer spirit. They fight and work really hard to achieve their dreams, and they're very stubborn if someone tries to change their mind. That's not something that they're going to do. But they don't really judge or try to change other people's minds because of Venus's influence here. They want to be very harmonious with other people, and they really value like not fighting. Having the moon in Taurus and the moon in the 11th house Taurus is just like someone who really doesn't like change, but Julia Fox's 8th house Aquarius Sun only likes change. And so she has this paradox in her. Her need, her soul, her moon is to not change and be very stable. And her sun, her ego, her life journey is to do a lot of changing. And so she has to figure out how to integrate what she wants and what she needs, which are two oppositional things, while not making either of them feel like completely left out and like she's ignoring them. Because that is a recipe. Ignoring one of your luminaries will not end well for you, trust me. So Julia's moon is at 10 degrees of Taurus, and it actually is perfectly in between a trine with her Neptune and her Uranus in Capricorn. Her Uranus is at 7 degrees and her Neptune is at 13 degrees Capricorn. So it's got a 3-degree orb with both planets, which I think is cool. And also the moon represents the mother in astrology. So she basically has like a Uranus mother aspect and a Neptune mother aspect, which comes across very clearly, as you will see. People who have moon Uranus aspects in general, but specifically this like trine, very positive, supportive aspect, are people who need a lot of space and freedom on a day-to-day basis. They need to be able to feel whatever they feel without feeling like people judge them for it. They need to be able to change their emotions on a dime and not have people be like, but you said one thing like a minute ago. That is not going to fly with these people. They really need like emotional sovereignty from other people, or else they are not going to want to be in a relationship with them. They hate to feel fenced in their emotional or domestic life, and they're often like very restless. They're people who feel really itchy for change, which pairs quite nicely with her Aquarius Sun. Although a little different from her Aquarius Sun, because both the moon and Uranus are in earth signs, Taurus and Capricorn, this change is more like material and behavioral. It's actual tangible change, not just change in like the mind sort of way that air sign Aquarius likes to do. And here's where her mom comes into it. People who have the moon trine Uranus or the moon and Uranus in aspect are people who usually had way too much change in their early childhood and had to basically mother their own parents while they were children. An experience of way too early maturity in childhood when they should have just been being a kid. This aspect breeds someone who is super intuitive. So if someone is caring for them, like if her mother was caring for her but didn't want to be caring for her, she would pick that up lightning fast. And then every time in the future that she has her mom caring for her, she'll be like, well, she doesn't actually want to do it. And so she starts to do things independently by herself. If you have this aspect but Sun Uranus instead of Moon Uranus, just replace mother with father. That means that your dad clearly didn't want to be taking care of you and you picked up on it really easily. And then every time he was like pretending to care about you, you were like, well, you don't have to keep pretending. I'll do it myself. Any aspect of the luminary, a sun or a moon, in aspect to Uranus is saying that you really had to be an adult as a kid and you didn't get to just be a kid and be nurtured by your parents, which is their job, and you had to do all that shit yourself. And that is traumatizing. I want you to understand that that is trauma and that it is not your fault and that you just did what you had to do to survive. Because I feel like a lot of millennials had to go through the same thing and it freaking sucked. And it sucks that a lot of like boomer parents are calling millennial parents like snowflakes for like caring for their children. And it's like, no, that's what you were supposed to do. That was actually your only job. But thank you, whatever. If you can't tell, I'm slightly bitter about spending $10,000 on therapy that I could have spent on, I don't know, like 6 vacations. Julia's Uranus is in her 7th house, which is the house of domestic partnerships. It's the house of marriage. It's the natural house of Libra, so it values harmony. And it's all about finding balance and harmony because it is naturally ruled by the planet Venus. Uranus and Venus are very different. Uranus is a very erratic planet and it does not like compromise. And Venus is like the compromise queen. Like these two do not get along, but they're here nonetheless. People with Uranus in their 7th house often struggle to establish relationships. They actually excel in a lot of areas, but relationships is the one area where they just like can't figure it out. And they usually are people who find their like partnership, like the one, their life partner, much later in life than other people. They experience a lot of ups and downs in their love life. They will find their partner when they least expect it, which is cliche, but very true for this placement. And they also will have a lot of relationships very suddenly end, very unexpected. Uranus is unexpected surprises. And then with the moon trine Neptune, Neptune is the planet of like illusions and something that's elusive. And so for a child who has moon in aspect with Neptune, their mother, the moon, was probably like elusive, something that they couldn't quite get a grasp on, which is very true of Julia Fox's mom because she was never even around. When she was around, they fought, but she was never around in the first place. It's like her mother was just an illusion. This is a combination that's extremely sensitive and impressionable because the moon receives. You know, the moon doesn't have light of its own. It reflects the light of the sun. The moon is a receiver. It's soft and it's yielding. And then Neptune blurs boundaries. Neptune is like, I don't know. Neptune is confusion. Therefore, this person is someone who has a very, very hard time setting boundaries and therefore often takes on the problems and the work of other people because they just physically can't tell what's theirs and what's the other person's. And this also actually reminds me of the card, the 10 of Wands in tarot. The 10 of Wands shows a person burying their face into a bundle of 10 wands, and not showing a face in tarot and in archetypal mythology in general is a lack of individuation. Like, your face is what makes you different from other people. So when you're not showing your face, it means that you might not really know who you are. And so having a murky sense of self and not knowing who your authentic self is and what you want makes it so that it's hard for you to set boundaries because you don't know who you are. You don't know where you start and where you end. And therefore, it's really hard to place boundaries around that. So you end up taking on a lot of other people's feelings and a lot of other people's work because it might be your work. Like, you don't know, you literally can't tell. And that's very similar to this moon Neptune aspect. These people are amazing at feeling feelings, but struggle a lot with understanding what those feelings are and defining them. This is the anti-intellectualizing your feelings final boss. And it's a bit like a mermaid, like slippery, elusive, a little bit of magic that you can't quite catch, you can't quite put your finger on. These are people who really struggle with commitment, and they really don't like to feel hard or difficult feelings. So they become very avoidant people, doing elaborate routines that grow in size and complexity as they get older to avoid feeling anxiety or feeling unworthy or any other hard and difficult feeling. But that prevents you from moving forward. Like, you have to be able to sit in uncomfortable feelings and process them in order to move your life forward. Otherwise, you're just going to structure your life around all of these elaborate rituals that let you avoid feeling anxious, let you avoid feeling sad, let you avoid feeling lonely. And this is where we get into a lot of maladaptive coping mechanisms, which for Julia Fox came in the form of love, relationships with bad people, and drugs. Wherever Neptune is in your chart shows where you struggle with illusions. And so in the 7th house, this is a place where you struggle with illusions in your relationships. These are people who can really easily get stuck in really bad relationships just because they have their rose-colored glasses on and they refuse to see what's actually in front of them. They're like, no, the version of this relationship that exists in my brain says that it's actually going really well. And so it must be going really well, guys. Stop telling me to break up with him. Things are amazing. And this is actually very dangerous, and another reason that you should know about astrology, because when I met my ex-boyfriend, Neptune in Pisces was directly opposing my Mercury in Virgo. And when I was asking my astrologer last summer, like, should we try to make it work? Should we break up? She was like, you have not seen this relationship clearly the entire time that you've been in it, because you have had on this Neptunian rose-colored glasses, like fog of confusion, where you have romanticized it in the way that you want a relationship to be playing out and not seeing what's actually there. And Neptune moves super slowly and retrogrades for half of every year. So for the duration of our 3-year relationship, Neptune was literally in opposition to my Mercury. But fortunately, I got out, life moves on, and these transits don't last forever. But definitely be careful about where Neptune is when you're starting a new venture that might seem a little too good to be true. And then moving on to the 3rd placement in Julia's big 3, her rising is in Cancer. Every beautiful moon-faced celebrity that you know has a Cancer rising. Kate Hudson, Margot Robbie, Julia Fox, Angelina Jolie, Kylie Minogue, Kanye West, Charlie XCX, Carly Kloss, Meghan Markle, Julia Roberts, Cher, Cameron Diaz, Rachel Zegler, just every beautiful moon-faced celebrity you know and love is a Cancer rising, including Miss Julia Fox. These people usually come off as very nurturing and caring souls who are very sensitive. They're very intuitive. at least a little bit psychic, and they have a very deep well of emotions, and they're very good at feeling those emotions. However, Cancer, obviously represented by the crab, has its little crab claws and its little crab shell, and so because they feel emotions so deeply and because they're so sensitive, they build a shell around themselves. And this manifests physically as moodiness and being sharp. Like Cancer risings, Cancer anything can be very sharp and incisive because they have a lot of emotions and sensitivity in themselves that they need to protect. And they need to find a way to do that. And a very easy way is to shut down and be like really moody. These are people who need to live in like very clean, homey environments. They love to cook and nurture their friends. They really, really value loyalty in their friends. Goes right along with her 11th house Taurus Moon. They really don't like superficiality and they need a deep emotional connection to have a relationship with someone. And they also actually travel really well because crabs, you know, have their shell. They have what they need to travel. Like Cancer risings can pack up and carry everything on their back, just like a crab shell, and travel somewhere new, which makes a lot of sense for Julia Fox specifically because she was like ping-ponging back and forth between Italy and New York for her whole childhood. Like she certainly developed an ability to pack light and travel easy. Julia's rising is conjunct her Jupiter in Cancer, which is an exalted Jupiter. Cancer is where Jupiter is on its throne, and it also is where Jupiter is right now. Very exciting. Side note, I just finished reading the book Exalted by Anna Dorn, which one is very rudely about me, and I literally wrote Anna Dorn an email. I was like, oh my god, I am the Gemini moon, broke, depressed astrologer living in Los Angeles. Like, why did you write this book about me? In 2019, 5 years before I became an astrologer. Like, what? How did this happen? Like, down to the Gemini moon. Like, how did this happen? And then I continued reading the book, and then she has sex with her brother. And so I wrote Anna another email, and I was like, oh, I just got to the part where she had sex with her brother. This is not about me in any way. I have learned my lesson to start doing my research before I start claiming people as twin because no. Anyway, very embarrassing times, but Anna did respond and she said, thank you. And that's really all a girl can ask for. But if you haven't read any of Anna's work, I really like her book Perfume and Pain, and I really like her book Exalted, even though you have to suspend disbelief because someone cannot have every planet in their chart exalted because you cannot have a sun in Aries and have Mercury in Virgo. It's just not possible. Maybe you can go ask Katy Perry to get on another one of Jeff Bezos's rockets and go have a conversation with the sun and Mercury and try to work something out. But I don't have that power. I don't like Jeff Bezos. And Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom are actually getting divorced because of something to do with her going on that space flight. Which, hey, karma comes back around step by step from town to town. But anyway, Jupiter conjunct ascendant is someone who just goes out into the world with a very buoyant and optimistic attitude, someone who is very philosophical about life's challenges, someone who's always looking for a silver lining, always seeing the bright side, always being like, oh, this is a blessing in disguise, things like that. These are people who actually seem a lot like Sagittarius risings, even when they're not Sagittarius risings. I had a client who was a Virgo rising, and I had known her for years, and I was like, I genuinely always thought you were a Sagittarius rising, but she has Jupiter conjunct her ascendant. And so that gives her that like natural Jupiterian spirit that Sag risings have. Jupiter is all about international travel and foreign lands. And so these people like to at least appear well educated in the ways of the world and in education. Jupiter also rules higher education. And they likely had a lot of their formative life experiences either in educational settings or in foreign lands. Obviously true for Julia Fox, who spent most of her childhood in Italy. And people who have Jupiter conjunct either the ascendant or descendant, like Taylor Swift, also are fantastic at giving advice because they have an innate Jupiterian need in them to seem both generous and knowledgeable. Moving directly across the chart, we have Julia's 7th house Capricorn stellium, which includes her Mercury, Mars, Venus, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. That is 6 Capricorn placements. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. Like 6 placements in a Saturn-ruled sign does not make for an easy life. And the 7th house is obviously the house of committed partnerships. So it's not an easy life in general, but especially not an easy life in terms of your one-on-one relationships. The positive side of having a Capricorn 7th house, so being a Cancer rising is that these people are a pillar of strength for those who they love. Like Capricorn is a feminine earth sign, but it is a very strong, goal-oriented, success-driven sign who will do what it takes to get what they want. And so in relationships, they become that person for their partner. They show their partners unbreakable commitment. And these are people who take relationships very seriously. They're super selective of who they choose to be in relationships with, because relationships aren't just something that they're like, oh yeah, this is fun, I'll just do this. No, it's something that they have a very Saturnian bent on, something that they take very seriously. And being a Cancer rising in general, they have a lot of emotions and emotional turbulence. And so they seek out partners who have Capricorn qualities, who can be a pillar of emotional support when they're going through emotional turbulence because they're a Cancer rising. Saturn is all about time and age, so these people often seek out older or more mature partners. And because this house is ruled by Saturn, they really worry that they'll never be able to find the life partner who they want, that has all the traits that they're looking for in a partner. And more than anything, these people just hate wasting time on people who aren't worth it. So that's a big problem for them because they don't want to date around a lot of people. They want to find their partner and they want to settle down. But they are likely to find their partner later in life because Saturn rewards hard work and age and time. Julia has her Mercury in her 7th house Capricorn, and these people have a very specific and unique way of communicating in relationships that is very formal. It's Capricorn, but it also is very effective. I think that having a Capricorn Mercury is just a great thing in general because these people know how to communicate in a very structured and effective way. When they have conversations with their partners in relationship, those conversations are very serious and focused. And Capricorn Mercuries like to listen before they talk. They like to have all of the facts. So they will listen to their partner and make them feel listened to and understood, and then use that information and what they already had going into the conversation to put forth what they want to say. They think before they speak, which is also a hallmark of Mercury conjunct Saturn, which Julia also has here. It's a lot of Saturn influence going on. They're also incredibly good at negotiating because they always hear out both sides of an argument before they make their decisions. And I know that Julia Fox's life has been so freaking frustrating because there have been so many times where she has tried to moderate situations between someone who worked at a bar who assaulted her and herself or someone else. And she talks about this a lot in her book, but she has all the answers. She has 6 Capricorn placements. She knows what the fuck she's doing. She's very, very intelligent, but because she's a woman or because she is a hot woman or because she was a sex worker or because she's a drug addict or any number of reasons, people, specifically men, don't trust what she's saying. They don't value her opinion. And it's this is the woman who is most capable in the whole entire world of negotiating things and of coming to agreements. She is very sensible and fair-minded and rational. And you just write her off because she's a hot woman. It is just such a frustrating experience. And I feel so strongly for Julia Fox. As I mentioned, her Mercury is also conjunct her Saturn in Capricorn, which has a lot of the same significations. It's someone who thinks before they speak. But when Saturn touches a planet, it shows you that you have struggled with that and continue to struggle with the significations of that planet, which for Mercury is communication. So this is someone who has always felt misunderstood and has probably faced a language barrier in their lifetime, which I'm sure happened when she was living in Italy and then bouncing between Italy and New York at a very early age. Her Mercury and Saturn are also conjunct Venus here. Mercury conjunct Venus is someone who is very amiable. They have a lot of tact. They have a lot of grace in their expression. It's someone, because Venus is beauty and love and harmony, and Mercury is the way you speak. So it's someone who even over the phone, you hear their voice and you just fall in love with it, similar to love at first sight, but with voice. That is Mercury and Venus. This might be the reason why so many clips of her go viral. She just has a way of speaking that really attracts other people and makes them want to listen closer and pay more attention. This is an aspect that makes for an amazing creative writer, which Julia obviously is. It's also great for people who are fine artists and people whose work involves movement, either of their hands, crafts that use their hands, or becoming dancers. They talk and think a lot about their values, and they often comment on money issues. And specifically, this is an aspect that is shared by one Karl Marx. So, close enough. Welcome back, comrade Julia Fox. Plus, she's an Aquarius Sun, like she will lead us in the revolution. I'm excited. And then having Venus conjunct Saturn indicates, again, that she struggles with love. These are people who have a hard time taking a compliment. It's people who aren't super comfortable with expressing their femininity because Venus is a feminine planet. Saturn is like fear or struggles. And so this is someone who is just not like born into this world feeling super comfortable expressing their self in a super feminine way. And something astrology is really good for is like understanding the difficulties in your placements and how you can get around that and how you can move around this. And Julia has a day chart. So Saturn isn't actually her most difficult planet. That's Mars, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Saturn is called her malefic of sect. But if you have Venus conjunct your Saturn and Saturn is a real challenge for you, you can lean more on the moon to do your like feminine receptive activities, to build your intimate relationships. You can do that more from the moon side than from the Venus side if Venus is in conflict with something and you have to touch like the prickly spikes of Saturn in order to do Venusian activities. And vice versa. If Saturn is touching your moon, then you can lean more on Venus for these activities. There are always ways around these like really prickly and thorny aspects in your birth chart. Similar to how if there's an obstacle on the road, there is always a detour. It just might take a longer time and not give you exactly the experience you wanted. And her Mercury also makes a sextile to her Pluto in her 5th house. Mercury sextile Pluto is an aspect I think I've talked quite a lot about before. I know that I talked about it with the Kardashians episode because Kris Jenner has Mercury sextile Pluto, Mercury in some aspect to Pluto. I think Lady Gaga does too. This is one of my favorite aspects because I have it and I am a little bit biased, but little girl have some bias, like come on. But it means that you have like an obsessive desire to know the truth. It means that you shouldn't lie to these people because one, they already know the truth. Like you're not hiding anything from them by lying. They just know that you're a liar and that you're not willing to tell them the truth in a direct way. They hate when people use euphemisms. They hate when people beat around the bush. These people are amazing at journaling and creative writing because there's always more to say. I saw a TikTok last week where this girl was talking to a guy and he was like, oh, I can't journal because I don't have an inner monologue. Like if I saw a sunset in my journal, all I would be able to think to write is sunset. And then like, what's the point? I'll look back later and I'll just be like, what does that even mean? I'm so sorry. Are people like that? Are there people out there who don't talk to themselves all the time? This is what annoys me. There was that whole like trend on Twitter or whatever a couple of years ago that was like ADHD or autistic person complaining about something and then other person being like, can you guys do anything? Can you guys do anything? You can't even write a journal entry about seeing a sunset. All you can think to write is sunset. Like, are neurotypical people okay? Like, I understand that we live in a capitalist society and we do value like practical things like doing work or whatever, even though finance isn't real. That's not practical. But then we move on to issues of the brain, matters of the brain, and y'all can't even write a journal entry about a gorgeous sunset, and we're the ones who can't do anything? I don't think so, honey. If Matt and Bowen ever have me on Las Culturistas, maybe that will be my I don't think so, honey. But also, no, it'll probably be something way more petty about something like, actually, this isn't even petty. Why do mocktails cost the same price as cocktails? It's literally just juice. I don't drink. I quit drinking 3 years ago. Can I buy a glass of juice without it costing $10? I don't think so, honey. Anyway, back to Mercury sextile Scorpio. Don't lie to them. Great at journaling. Obsessed with making connections where no one else can find the connections. Very similar to 8th house Aquarius Sun, which Julia also has. They're very intuitive and they have incredible detective skills. Now, Julia Fox's Pluto is in Scorpio like most millennials, and Scorpio is her 5th house. The 5th house is all about things like creativity and sexuality and dating and hobbies and entrepreneurship and children. So having Pluto, a very, very strong opinionated planet in the 5th house, is indicative of someone who is very creative, but has like a very egotistical bent to it. Someone who really needs to be the center of attention. And if someone else is the center of attention, can get really jealous. But if they're able to overcome this like melodramatic, like I must be the center of attention at all times or else sort of mentality, Pluto is all about power. And so these people have the power to change the world and to change society through their creativity and through the art that they make. They have a lot of struggles with authority, and they also get emotionally overwhelmed really easily because of this sort of like 0 or 100 mentality. Either they don't want attention at all, or they better be the absolute center of attention and nothing in between. That can overwhelm you emotionally quite easily. And these people are also risk takers. They're daredevils. They love intensity in their emotional and love and general life. And this so gives me Julia Fox, because when she's talking about like going on ride-alongs with her boyfriend while he was doing his drug deals, and then, oh no, they're fighting and the cops are involved. Like, that shit didn't make her want to leave the relationship at all. Like, it just drew her more into it. And it's like, yeah, this makes sense, because that is what she wanted. She was like seeking adventure. That's why she became a dominatrix and worked in a sex dungeon. That's why she was addicted to heroin. When I first looked at her chart, I was a little bit surprised that she didn't have any placements. And the 12th house usually talks about like addictive behaviors and maladaptive coping mechanisms. But all of her drug use is covered in other placements in her chart, including her 5th house Pluto. And I think it's because her drug use was so related to other people. Like, she started doing heroin because some guy that she hooked up with, like, was a heroin dealer and could get her heroin. She did drugs with her friends. There was certainly an aspect of being a traumatized child and therefore needing to develop coping mechanisms that aren't healthy because she was never taught how to cope in healthy ways. But it was also just a lot about her relationships with other people as a reason that she started doing drugs. The last Capricorn placement I'm going to cover is her Capricorn Mars in her 7th house conjunct her descendant. People who have Mars in the 7th house need to develop a balance between their need to be in a relationship and their need to assert their own will, that assertive drive that Mars gives you in your birth chart. Mars does not like to be in the 7th house. Mars is actually in detriment in Libra, which is the natural sign of the 7th house. Mars is in detriment in any sign that's ruled by Venus, including the sign of Libra. And vice versa, Venus is in detriment in any sign ruled by Mars. These are also people who achieve their desires and their goals through the relationships that they're in. And I think this very much indicates why she was in a relationship with Kanye West. Like, Kanye West isn't her type. Men aren't even her type. Like, she didn't want to be with him for him, but she knew that he was a very public figure in the spotlight. He had just gotten divorced from Kim Kardashian. And so by dating him, she would be in the spotlight. Right around the same time that she was in Uncut Gems, she really shot herself to celebrity using Kanye West. That's Mars in the 7th house. One-on-one relationships will always be very important for these people in achieving their goals. But once these people realize that their welfare and the attainment of their desires is dependent on the other person that they're in a relationship with, they can like bend their will to appease this person. And that can lead them down holes of like people pleasing and codependence, which is when things get really ugly, especially having Neptune here in the 7th house as well, of like illusions and seeing only what you want to see. This is a recipe for disaster. And I think reading her memoir, I was like, why are you still with this guy, about her like high school drug dealer boyfriend? And this is why. She was living out her fantasy in her mind, and she was using him to have a place to live. She was living with him and using him for other reasons. And so she was like, I have to make this relationship work. Otherwise, I'm not going to have a place to live. So I have to do what he wants me to do, which just like as an adult, I want to go back and give like 15-year-old Julia Fox a hug and just be like, you don't have to live with your evil, abusive drug dealer boyfriend. You will be safe. Please just get out of there. And then Mars is a planet that's exalted in the sign of Capricorn, so it does its best work here. Capricorn obviously is very tangible. It's an earth sign. It's goal-oriented. It's success-focused. And so people who have Mars in Capricorn have all of these traits. They are goal-oriented. They are success-focused. They really live in like a physical and tangible reality where they set physical and tangible goals and are incredibly driven to achieve them. These people see practicality as the surest route to success. And then having Mars conjunct the descendant, more specifically than just having Mars in the 7th house, means that you often look to other people to understand the retaliatory impulses that you should be having. These are people who actually make great lawyers, or anyone who has to advocate on someone else's behalf. They are not people who have a naturally cooperative streak to them. They have to fight really hard with themselves to get to a place where they're able to cooperate. And Mars moves really quickly, so these are also people who are quite impulsive about relationships, which is so different from having like Venus in Capricorn, having 7th house in Capricorn. It's usually like very like serious, as I mentioned, very serious about which partner they choose. But with Mars here on the descendant, it's also like, but we actually don't have to think that hard. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? They jump really quickly into relationships. Those relationships often are bad for them. They jump very quickly out. And in general, once this person finds a relationship that's not just impulsive and that actually does work for them, they need to have some element of competition in the relationship. It's good for people who like to play sports together. If you don't like sports, you can play video games or board games together. You can even like turn doing the chores into some sort of competition. You just need to make sure that you have a competitive outlet in your relationship that's healthy and not just like fighting with each other. And then the last placement I'll talk about with regards to Julia Fox is that her North Node is also in her 8th house Aquarius, exactly conjunct her Sun, meaning that her South Node, the point of releasing, is in her 2nd house of Leo. Your North Node is all about what you need to move toward. Your South Node is all about what comes very naturally to you, which is because you did these things in your last life, if you believe in reincarnation, which I very much do. And so there are things that naturally come really easy to you and that you're drawn to do. But in order to achieve your life purpose, you have to let go of these things and do things that are on the opposite side of the zodiacal wheel, which are usually in pretty stark contrast and things that get you out of your comfort zone. And so people who have Leo South nodes, like Julia Fox, have always been obsessed with like being a good kid. Leo is obviously a very individual sign. It's very egoistic. And these people grew up feeling like they had to do every extracurricular activity and be very good and shiny and make their parents extremely proud in order to survive. They have a hard time understanding that they have a lot of worth by just existing, that they're worthy of safety and care because they are human, because those are their parents and taking care of them is their job. And to heal, they need to understand that they are not like mommy's shiny girl. They are not like daddy's precious baby. They are a human. They're just a normal, regular human being, just like everyone else at the end of the day. Strip away your accomplishments. You are just flesh and bone and soul and brain and emotions, just like every single other person around you. Aquarius is very much like a collectivist sign, a sign of the people, whereas Leo, ruled by the sun, is the sign of the king. So they need to strip away their ego and let all of that go and realize that they are fighting in community for what the community needs and what would benefit all of the people, not just the things that would benefit themselves. They've always felt misunderstood and like they were a stranger in their environments. And when you're a child, feeling like you don't belong in your environment is scary because it becomes survival. We have a natural instinct that if we belong in a family, that means we're safe. And if we don't, that means we're unsafe. So they heal when they realize that they are actually not too strange to be in their environment because, once again, at the end of the day, we are all people. We all belong to a community of people. No one is too strange or too misunderstood that it makes them non-human. I mean, maybe not no one. I'm looking at you, Jeff Bezos. But they have to give up what they've always thought that they should be and just be who they are and understand that everyone else is going through a very similar thing and that we should all work together for things that make life better for every person. And once again, like any maladaptive or unhealthy coping strategies that you developed as a child because your parents weren't taking proper care of you are not your fault. They are your responsibility to heal and to make sure that they don't overcome your life. I would like to charge my dad for my therapy, but I will cross that bridge when I get to it. But there is a real problem of people, especially baby boomers, heaping all of their baggage and all of their laziness and their lack of desire to work to make the world a better place and their like active making the world a worse place onto kids and being like, children are the future. No, children are the present. Like they're alive. They're living, breathing beings right here, right now. And just because you raised them, which is literally your job, like if you don't want to raise a child, don't have a child. Don't get me started on iPad babies. You also can't give them all your problems. Just be like, I did all this work for you, so here, you have to do all this work later. It's very messed up. I personally know that I don't want to raise a child, and so I am not having one. Crazy how that works. But anyway, Julia Fox's sun being conjunct her North Node means that her conscious goals in life, her sun, her internal compass, is exactly aligned with where her soul wants to go, her soul's journey. So they can really easily help each other out on this journey without having to fight conflicts. Like my moon is conjunct my South Node. Every time I try to get what I need or get my emotional needs met, I'm moving away from my destiny. It's hell. This is like a very nice aspect. It's like all of our goals are the same. We can all work together well. And this path will not be easy. Like the path to achieving your soul's desires is never an easy path. That's sort of why it's there. Like people aren't supposed to just skate by their whole lives and not face challenges. But because these two things are aligned, like every obstacle she faces in this life is going to bring her closer to both her soul's and her ego's destiny. So this is something where it's really easy for her to have that like Jupiter rising sense of positivity, because truly every challenge is a blessing in disguise. Like every hard thing that she's dealt with has led her closer to her soul and her ego's goal in this lifetime. I think that's amazing. And then the last thing I want to talk about is just an example of a Saturn return story that played out really strongly. Julia Fox's Saturn return in Capricorn hit the exact placement on March 23rd, June 7th, and December 14th, 2019, which was around the time when Uncut Gems came out. And so her Saturn return is really a story about finding out that her best friend Gianna had died of an overdose. Gianna was obviously a one-on-one best friend. Her Saturn is in her 7th house of one-on-one relationships. So this was the crisis, which is the Saturn return, but it also inspired her to get clean from drugs, which is the Saturn return thing, that it's going to cause a crisis in your life, but you're going to get stronger from it if you face the crisis head on. If she had gone back into using drugs afterwards, then she would have had a problem, but it was the motivating factor that helped her to stay clean. At the same time, she's also having a lot of trouble in her marriage with Peter Artemyev or something, who she met on the set of Uncut Gems, and she finds herself getting pregnant and she wants to get an abortion, but then she calculates the baby's due date and the baby is actually scheduled to be born on the same exact day as Gianna's birthday. So she's like, oh, this is Gianna reincarnated. Like, I can't abort this child. And then she's like, so it's going to be a girl because it's Gianna reincarnated. And then she has a dream where Gianna comes to her and is like, ugh, I can't believe I have to be reincarnated as a boy. And so Julia's like, oh, just kidding, it's a boy. And then she goes and finds out the gender and it's a boy. And so that boy today is her son, Valentino, another one of her little Saturn return gifts, and a living, breathing memento of her best friend Gianna, who passed away way too early. And once again, in your life, especially being Capricorn dominant, you will have a lot of really bad things come your way, but they will always have something to teach you and a positive impact on your life if you face them head on and don't just do all of your elaborate avoidance strategies to avoid facing any sort of difficult and challenging situation. And that, my friends, is Julia motherfucking Fox. I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. Also, if you have any requests for celebrities or traits or placements that you would like me to cover in a future episode, please let me know in the comments. As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I just launched my astrology business and I have a 20% off promotion going through the end of June. That means that this is coming out on Sunday, June 29th. So today and tomorrow are your last 2 days to book a reading for 20% off. I probably won't have a promotion like this again for quite a while, until my birthday in September. So I definitely recommend booking if that's something that you're interested in. You can book on calendly.com/popstrology, or you can go to my website at popstrologypod.com. You can also follow me on Instagram or TikTok at popstrologypod. You can follow my personal Instagram, which is at astrojessie_. And then, as always, you can shoot me an email if you would like to anytime at popstrology@proton.me. I love you so much for being here. Thank you for all of your support, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.